So I've been doing this podcast for just over 3 years and I really want to bring it live for you all. So I'm going to need a favor from you. If you're interested in seeing the SAVVYWALLET podcast live, please register your interest by signing up to my mailing list with the link in the description of this episode. Thank you so much for your support so far.
I was like, for real, this is what they're giving you after 25 years of service? And I was like, you know what? It's a cutthroat world and you've really got to basically just like look out for number one and build your own where you can actually control your own destiny to a certain extent. I wouldn't say that's necessarily only need to be entrepreneur for that. You can be in a 9-to-5. Even in a 9-to-5, they don't love you. When it's time for layoffs, potentially you're the first to go.
What do you think are the ingredients for a entrepreneur to be successful?
Right now, the world is not rewarding shy people. You're losing to people who probably you're better than because you're not willing to put yourself out there and face maybe some potential embarrassment. I took my entrepreneurship career like a normal career, like being a lawyer, for example. I said, okay, I'm at the ground floor right now. I'm willing to put years into this. Even if I have to go back to do 9-to-5, I'm still, in my mind, psychologically, my identity is I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to keep building and be dedicated towards it so that in 10 years, it works out. And that's what I did. When I started getting real money from entrepreneurship, it was 30. Do you get what I'm saying? My first employee was 31. But like, that's not the story that you hear. You're normally used to seeing social network, Mark Zuckerberg 19, dropping out of uni and all of a sudden it's billions, but the narrative is not the reality.
Let's talk about wealth, right? Building wealth. What's like your building wealth strategy?
You want to pick the strategy that 9 times out of 10 work for most people, not the strategy that work for that one dude that you know.
You're not defined by where you come from.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big message that I always want to tell people. Like
you have to be able to be uncomfortable. Like be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
When you grow up in ends, you don't realize it when you're confident, but you have an audacity to do things that ordinarily most people wouldn't be willing to do.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Atto. We have a special guest in the building. We have Michael, who's a software engineer, founder of POCIT, which has been running for 7 years. It's a career platform to help Black and underrepresented people land their next role in tech and elevate their careers. And he's a startup investor, investing in companies like Tressly. Remember, we also had Antoinette, the founder. So make sure to go and check out that video where she was talking about, setting up that business. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate coming down.
Welcome. It's been good, man. I've had you on my list, so it's going to be an interesting, conversation. And I think, we're going to learn a lot from this and take a lot of value from it. So, obviously I described you in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Who would you say Michael is?
The summary was pretty accurate. So born and raised in Northwest London, British Eritrean, and always wanted to be kind of like an entrepreneur. From my first retail job in like Habitat, it's like an old furniture shop. I was like, this can't be my life. I need some ownership over my time and a chance to kind of build wealth my own way. So from there on in, I always tried a few little ventures. I had a little e-commerce business that didn't work out. So much so that I had to go to like a market store and try and shift all the goods like during Christmas. And my mum was like, this is what I sent you to university for, to be a market store trader. But anyways, but I didn't give up. I went then and learned to code. I went and got like a master's in computer science after that. And then kind of have been working in startups and then went and did my own thing. Like around the age of like 26. So almost 10 years ago.
That's crazy. Yeah. And we're going to explore that because that's very, very interesting, right? So let's talk about Northwest, you said. Not Southwest, Northwest.
Don't make no mistakes there.
You said you grew up in Northwest. Were you born in Northwest as well?
Yeah, born and raised Northwest London. Yeah. And even now I've moved, but I've still moved kind of within Northwest London. I got a love-hate relationship with it. It's not
love-hate.
Yeah, like I feel like all the cool stuff now in the East and like all the entrepreneurial stuff, startup stuff, creative stuff, everything. And you know what I'm saying? But it's home.
Yeah. So what was it like? Whereabouts in Northwest did you mostly grow up?
Do you know Kilburn? Kilburn. I grew up there. You know what, to be fair, like the way I was raised, like I wasn't really allowed to just go outside for foolishness. Do you get what I'm saying? So when people ask me about what's it like in Kilburn, I never had that Kilburn, upbringing where I was just, where I got the horror stories. Like obviously I knew people that probably weren't doing the smartest things with their time, but Mumsy was just like, where you going? You know what I'm saying? Okay. Like staying home, like we're gonna chill, like you're gonna play your games and read your books and stuff like that. So that was kind of me. That's my Kilburn experience.
That.
Yeah.
I like that. That's so interesting that look, a lot of people need to listen to their parents because listening to their parents has done you good. Do you get what I'm trying to say, right? That's mad. Did you school in the area as well?
So I went to school in Harrow. So I commuted like 45 minutes. For a young boy, that's kind of crazy.
That's a lot. Yeah.
In Harrow Wardstone. And yeah, it was an okay school. So it's actually funny, actually, the person who I ended up hiring to be like my COO, turns out he went to that school as well. And I didn't realize, and he was like, I was like, so what was it like after I left? And he was like, yeah, it went downhill, it just became hood and just whatever. God. So when my mum sent me there, I think she thought it was like a reputable school, but I think it declined pretty quickly after I left.
Oh gosh. I mean, look, that's what happens sometimes with schooling, right? And I guess, what were you like at school? Were you into the studies and...
Yeah, so my schooling was, I had different chapters, let's say. So my GCSEs, I done very well. And then A-levels, I just did horrible. I just lost focus. I wasn't paying attention. I went to a college where it was a lot of freedom. Basically, you could just, it wasn't a sixth form, it's just a college straight up. Like, so those people there that were 30 doing their thing, whatever. And I only picked it because it was very close to where I grew up.
Yeah.
So academically, A-levels, I did terrible. Then first year of university, I failed that too, because I wasn't really, I was partying. Like, do you know what I'm saying? It was only really until my final year of university where I was like, do you know what? This can't be me. Like, I need to kind of step up. Like, I started to realize that like, I'm going down a path here where like, it's hard to kind of to you know what I'm saying, to wheel it back. So managed to come out of uni with 2-1. But for a few years there, yeah, I was very much on the non-serious track. But same time, I'm kind of glad I got it kind of out of my system.
Yeah.
People say to me like, let's go out partying, but like, you know, there was 18 months where I went out every day, but pretty much like there was 1 week, literally Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like Thursday, Friday, the whole week I was out somewhere. So I got it out of my system, and you know, in the nick of time to get serious.
Yeah, and I mean, look, university could do that to you. I was like that, man. I was
you go to?
I went to Sussex.
Oh, Sussex doesn't have that reputation. I went to Kingston.
Oh yeah,
known as a party uni.
Yeah.
Kingston's a party uni, and that's. But Sussex, I'm sure, has its thing, but Kingston was just crazy, man. I was like, what am I doing here? I'm smarter than this, man. Is he playing serious?
That's the thing. I think, like, you know, uni, you do have to be careful, because I think because you've got so much freedom to do, it's like freedom to manage your time.
Yep.
You're having to, obviously you've got to go to, you know, make sure you go to your lectures, but outside of that, what are you kind of doing? And I think it was just normal to just kind of like go out and stuff like that. But actually, I think some of the really people that probably, you know, went ahead was maybe planning their careers or maybe side businesses. When I look back at it, like, do you know how much time we had? We
had so much time. You might have a 9 o'clock lecture and then you're done for the day.
Yeah.
And then you're just doing foolishness. You could have done a business. You could have had free job. You could have done so much stuff. But maybe you got to get out of your system.
Yeah,
you got to enjoy it. And then now we're in our 30s.
You're like, okay,
every day's a great work. We're building something. And, you know, maybe we would have been depressed if we just did that from the day one.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously back then, I literally remember someone, you know, final year uni, yo, you heard of this Bitcoin thing? I was like, nah, bro, I'm trying to hear all that. I was just like, wow. And they were literally trying to figure out how to buy it, like in uni. So obviously we graduated probably around the same time. Bitcoin probably was 2008, and this is like 2010, 11. So I don't know what price it was then. I probably wouldn't be on this podcast if I bought it then. I'll be on the island somewhere coming in on a Zoom call, like. I was trying to hear.
If somebody could tell us what the price of Bitcoin, I'm thinking, I'm thinking probably $1. No, not one. It would have been a cent, maybe.
You think so?
Because didn't it start in 2009?
Yeah, it came out Great Recession. The guy did it after the bailout.
So it would have been a cent. Yeah,
I think it was low. We can fact check after this, but it would have been definitely enough for me to to be retired right now.
I wonder if this person actually managed to hold on to their Bitcoin.
But a lot of people, like, they lost their keys, or they didn't take it seriously. There was no Coinbase. This wasn't like you could just go into a platform and it was professional. It was very much early wild west. So there's a lot of famous stories of guys that, you know, threw away their devices and there's millions of dollars there and they can't access it. So I don't know what happened to that person.
Yeah, there is one person actually I remember reading about that. It's an interesting article where I think he might have had it on hard drives, keys on hard drives, something like that, and he threw it in like the trash, and then he was like working with investors to try and retrieve this trash of like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Crazy.
The other thing, sorry to go on a tangent about crypto, is that like so often we sell on the way up because we don't have, we don't know how far it's going to go. So I know people that bought in at crazy low prices, but when it went to like, $1,000, they were like, well, it can't go any higher than this. Like, so let me just cash out right now and buy a little something. Because my wife needs this or whatever, you know what I mean? Not realizing that it was going to go 100x from there. So these are the hard things with investing, is you just never know, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about investing and building wealth because I think it's very important to be able to do that as well. So, so in talking about like life experiences, right? I guess, how's your life experiences and upbringing shaped you into the person you are today?
That's a very good question. I would say, I think just growing up, you know, I'm not going to give like rags to riches story, but growing up just in a relatively normal kind of humble background, you know, social housing, stuff like that. Like you always wanted to kind of build wealth and gain control over your destiny. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I had that first retail job. And obviously after then I was like, you know, this is not how I envisage my future.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? And also my mother worked in that same business, the same retail shop. She was some nepotism in. That's my nepotism, getting a retail job in it, yeah. And she was there for almost 25 years.
Yeah.
And I saw like on the 25th anniversary, they just gave her like a $300 gift voucher. And I was like, for real, is this what they're giving you after 25 years of service? And I was like, you know what? It's a cutthroat world, and you've really got to basically just like, you know, look out for number one and build your own, you know what I'm saying, where you can't be fired, where you can actually control your own destiny to a certain extent. I wouldn't say that's necessarily, you know, you only need to be, you know, entrepreneur for that. You can be in a 9-to-5, but you know, even in a 9-to-5, they don't love you. Do you know what I'm saying? And when it's time for layoffs, potentially you're the first to go. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think I just grew up with a sense of wanting to control my own kind of destiny.
Yeah. Why is it that you felt like you know, wanted to, especially like Habitat, like you felt like, this is not where my life is. I want to kind of like move on from there.
To be real, it was just a lot of just like, I don't know, just management was treating you like rubbish, and you know, you were spoken to like a child. And I saw grown people there who were, you know, I didn't mind it because I was a kid. I was 18, 16, you know, I didn't mind. I thought this is part of life for your first job. But when I saw big people getting talked to like that, I was like, wow, is this what capitalism is? Like you just have to like swallow the worst stuff and you just got to take it on the chin, and because they pay your salary, like that's it basically, right? I didn't know at the time that, listen, there's a potentiality where one day you can have a remote job, you know, cushy on a beach somewhere working for Google. You know, that's a great life too, probably better than most entrepreneurs. So don't listen to this thinking you have to be an entrepreneur. But at that time, putting myself back in my mindset, that's what I was thinking. I was like, well, I want to be the person who has the ultimate freedom and can, you know, is calling the shots basically. Yeah. Because right now this is quite powerless. Yeah. Do you get? When I think back to it, we were getting paid like $5 an hour. Obviously with inflation, it's probably more. But when you think back, like my time is worth £5. It's crazy. Like
thinking that. Damn, I was not thinking that deeply when I was young.
5 gold coins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's your done. You're done.
No, the way you make it seem like that, man, you make me feel bad for like having the retail jobs. Because I'm not gonna lie, when I was in my retail jobs, I was just happy to be there. I was happy I was getting money, but honestly speaking, although I was happy that I was getting money, I also don't think that I thought, I'm going to be here forever. That I knew that wasn't going to be my end destiny. Right. But I was like, this is good for now. I'm getting some coins, I'm getting some money. But I wasn't feeling like I was going to be here at the end. So like I completely understand that, you know, not wanting to like want more for yourself. So I guess, you know, with POCIT, right? How did that happen? What was the inspiration for that sparked the creation of POCIT?
So I came off fresh like a breakup, like heartbreak, whatever, and I just wanted like, you know, to do a bit of solo traveling. So I went to New York, and when I went to New York, I was just networking like crazy out there. You know, I was just like trying to meet people, anyone who had a new friend of a friend, just a complete fresh start, whatever. And I met somebody out there, a friend of mine called Ruth, and basically she was trying to get into tech. And we were having conversations about like, wouldn't it be dope if like we could interview and do a blog series of like spotlighting kind of like black and, you know, out there, black and Latino engineers in tech. Because at the time that conversation about like diversity in tech wasn't really happening to that extent. It was, but it wasn't mainstream at that time. So we launched that when I kind of got back to the UK. And then eventually I was like, once it started to kind of snowball and it started to get attention, primarily on Twitter at the time. That's how long ago this is now, when Twitter was still kind of, you know, the place to be, I guess. I decided to go full time. So my business partner at the time, Ruth, decided like, you know, she just kind of wasn't for her. She wanted to kind of focus on getting her tech career popping. So I said, okay, let me just take this over and just like run with it basically.
You did it full time from the beginning?
So I did it full time after maybe 6 months.
That's quick.
Yeah. Whoa. I did it, But the reality is though, is that like, one, I was living at home.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? And these are the things that I say to people where it's like, sometimes the clamor to have that quote unquote grown and sexy life in London is actually what's holding you back to a certain extent. Like, because I lived at home until, you know, my late 20s. And that allowed me to kind of like leapfrog a lot of steps, because one, you know, I could contribute at home, but it wasn't like I needed to contribute 1,500, $2,000 a month. Like it was like I could contribute 4 or 5 bills, whatever.
Yeah.
How hard is that to kind of muster up? I don't need the fly stuff. I don't need to be going out. Like I'm just locking in for like at least 6 months, and that's how I was able to kind of get the ground, get it going. And we were generating revenue as well, so it wasn't like I was doing it and, you know, at a loss. It was making money. It just wasn't making crazy money straight away.
Yeah,
but I saw enough to say, okay, this is worth me pursuing.
It's crazy because like, I honestly want to hammer home what you just said about living at home, right? Because I feel like I've got a mortgage, I've got expenses, and I'm not gonna lie, right? Like, obviously, doing this podcast, I do it as a business as well. And what you said is so true. Like, those expenses that you have really can hold you back. Because
100%.
it's like, okay, your options are, right, that you need to have enough savings to be like, okay, I need a runway of 6 months to a year. That's a substantial amount of savings, especially if you've got a mortgage, you've got kids, do you know what I mean? You're married and stuff like that, right? It's either that or your business is already generating, and it's unlikely that your business will generate that straight away. Yeah. Businesses need, it's like anything, right? Like it's like a plant, right? That needs to grow 100% slowly, sustainably, right? So yeah, it's crazy because so many of us, like you say, put ourselves into this box. And I think Simon Squibb says this actually. He kind of says like, when he's on the whole, like, I don't think he's like, I think people get confused with the idea of him, like in terms of like
Simon Squibb is the guy on TikTok who was like, "What's your dream?"
Yeah, yeah. So he'll I think maybe sometimes it may come across like he's anti-property. I don't think he's anti-property. I think he's one of those people that says, don't wrap yourself into like buying a mortgage straight away if you have the dream of starting a business. Because if you do that, you do put yourself into that tight box of where it's very hard for you. You're a bit constrained in a way. So yeah, that's interesting that you were able to kind of do that. We've all experienced buyer's remorse, spending money on something and instantly wishing you could take it back. Leaving your business funds in a regular current account is just like that regretful purchase. It's a missed opportunity. The money's sitting there doing nothing when it could be earning interest and working for you. There's so many ways to grow a business, and using a high interest savings account is one of the lowest effort wins you can get. With rising business expenses like staff costs, travel, marketing, and software subscriptions, why not let your business savings do some of the heavy lifting? So I made the switch to Tide's instant savings account, which earns me up to 4.38% AER Variable on my business savings automatically, no extra admin required. The more you save, the higher the rate. So my money's always working at its best. I can access my business funds instantly with no withdrawal fees, and you don't even have to bank with Tide to use it. You can open an account with just £1 and it's FSCS protected up to £85,000. And because I know how valuable this could be for my community, I've partnered with Tide to bring you an exclusive offer. Get a £100 bonus when you open and fund a Tide's instant savings account with £5,000 within the first 30 days, and use my code SAVVYWALLET. Plus, for the first 6 months, new members can earn up to 4.38% AER Variable on their business savings. Setting up your Tide instant savings account takes just 3 simple steps. Tap the link in the episode description, enter the code SAVVYWALLET, and start putting your money to work. New members receive up to 4.38% AER free for 6 months. For the full offer, Ts&Cs, visit tide.co/savings. Rate correct as of the 1st of April 2025. I guess, how did you validate that the idea worked as well for yourself?
Yeah, so we were initially like a content play, so we were doing articles and a lot of people were giving us attention, but at the same time, that's not enough to determine whether something's a viable business. What happened is that we launched a newsletter. So I said to my co-founder, I said, listen, let's just, do a pop-up, collect emails, and have a weekly newsletter where we can just summarize our articles. All right, cool, fair enough. Then I had the idea to say, let's create a job section, and we're just going to get jobs from the best kind of companies that we're interested in, that we like, black owned ones, whatever, and we'll just like put it there basically. And then we'll have a link saying, if you want your job here, email us basically. Complete minimal viable product. And then somebody was like, yo, like we want to have our job here, like a real company, and they were asking us like how much, and I was like, $100. They were like, yeah, cool, like send us the PayPal. I was like, wow. So you've got to remember, so I mentioned that I had an e-commerce business. So when you do e-commerce, or even when I ended up doing the market store, you're buying a product, maybe you're buying a product for like $10 or whatever, and you're trying to sell it for 20. So you have a massive you have costs, which is your 10 cost of goods, and then you've got your little £10, you got your little £10 profit margin. But if you've got e-commerce, you've got overheads. If you're doing it in a market store, you got to pay the vent, you got to pay the thing. But when I realized that I had 100% gross margin, when somebody was willing to give me $100 for something that cost me nothing, just a line on text, I was like, okay, we are in business. I like this business where literally you're giving me money and it costs me nothing to produce that service. There's going to be other costs maybe if in the future, like employees, but like 100% gross margin. And I was like, okay, to my co-founder, I was like, we need to double down on this seriously, because I think there's a wisdom that you gain from having a bad business, that when you discover a good business, you know. And she didn't really clock like that. She was like, oh, well, I don't get it. Like, I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I've been in the trenches trying to do like physical businesses and stuff like that. Like, and it's horrible. Like, there's no margin, there's so much overhead, there's so much cost. So when you do these online based stuff, you know, and you haven't got a physical product that you're selling, it's like, oh wow, like this is, I knew straight away, this is something.
Yeah, wow, that's so interesting. $100.
Yeah.
You must have been like, I get it when you get your first like kind of client, you're like, this is amazing. Especially where it's at like you say, it's like, it's not something where you're like running an e-commerce business, which is tough, or any kind of business where you're having to sell goods and products and stuff like that. Right?
And not just that, it's also the fact that it was B2B.
Yeah.
So I realized that businesses are far more likely to spend money and not feel the pain of it. One, because the person who's spending the money, it's not their money. So they're not like, oh my God. But two, also, businesses that make hundreds of millions, billions of dollars are willing to invest a fraction of that in a product that may or may not help improve their business.
Yeah.
Whereas with a consumer, to get a consumer to give you $100, $10, $20, do you know how much, like, you know, people don't want to part with their money? Like, oh, what's this? Can I get a refund? Can I do this? And I was like, okay, this is a completely different venture.
Yeah.
And I like this side of it.
So talk a bit about POCIT. How does it kind of help people, and what kind of like value does it provide to them?
So we are a mixture of like LinkedIn and Business Insider, but primarily for helping kind of like Black and underrepresented people. So we have our own version of LinkedIn called POCIT Jobs, where you can create a profile, connect with companies. You know, companies can download your resume, they can filter and find like a software engineer based in this city, whatever, and then they'll reach out to you. You can view like companies' pages and follow them and listen to their latest updates. We also do events as well. So we do events here in the US and the UK where we can kind of like do mixers, brunches, networking events, panels, whatever. And then we also have media. So we have our newsletter where you can stay abreast of what's going on in the latest tech world in regards to like Black founders, Black startups, Black, you know, tech executives. And then we have a podcast as well called Tech-ish, which I co-host, which is like a roundup of the latest kind of like tech and pop culture news in general. So we talk about everything from like crypto to like Cardi B in like one episode basically. I co-host that with my friend Abadesi. She's also an entrepreneur. So yeah, we give you media. We also give you career opportunities. We also give you the chance to network at events. So we're trying to kind of cover the whole stack of your career journey. So from helping you find a job, helping you find friends, helping you find entertainment.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And what part of the business did you kind of start with first?
We started on the media side.
On the media, so that was the newsletter.
It was the content, newsletters. I think for entrepreneurs, I definitely recommend, it's now common sense, but at the time, building an audience, attention, building kind of like eyeballs to whatever you're doing, trying to own that attention. By that, I mean newsletter, emails. So for example, many people build followings on like social media, but you don't own that audience. If the algorithm changes, you have no access to those individuals anymore. I know many people that have been quote unquote shadow banned, or the algorithm changes and what they were doing just doesn't hit no more. But for example, my business, we have like a newsletter subscriber list of like 30,000
That's crazy.
thing. But we have many more followers on social media. But in terms of like what drives business value, how many people open those emails, how many people engage with those emails consistently over the last, 6-7 years, we get like 50-60% open rates. Whereas sometimes on social media, we'll post thinking, yeah, we got 50,000 followers, and it might be like 300 likes or 100 likes. And you're like, what is this? Like, why?
That's crazy,
we've been
isn't it?
grinding to build these followers up, and this is what we get, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So newsletter, so owning your audience, getting attention and pivoting it towards something where you can own, whether that's a podcast as well. Podcast is pretty similar. You own that connection. There's no in-between platform. There is, but it's not an algorithm in between. So when you upload an episode, the episode goes up. If people want to listen to it, they will. If they don't, they don't. But you know what I'm saying? So that's what I recommend starting with, kind of like building audience. And then once you have your audience, coming up with services and goods that solve their problems. So let's say you've got a newsletter on sleeping. You holler at the mattress companies. Listen, we've got 20,000 people. Do you know what I'm saying? Or you go to a manufacturer and say, we want to set up our own mattress company. If you want to go completely, end to end. So there's many ways to skin a cat, but having an audience and then figuring out services and products that service that audience, I think is the easiest way to kind of like have a business.
Yeah. So for you, it was obviously creating, the media content, showing value to your audience through there, like helping them with career advice and stuff like that. And then saying, okay, you know what? We also know that you're feeling the pain of, maybe now getting yourself a job or learning your next tech role. So actually, we're going to bring the companies to you now, right? That's amazing. And then not also that, we'll also add on to actually, you know what? Why don't you network with other people in the industry? That's quite amazing. Wow.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I would say in terms of like a mental model that I had to kind of discover was that, let's say you've got your audience now, and let's say maybe you're struggling to get sponsors. You got to think and say, what would be my dream sponsor, and can you invent that business? So for example, we were like thinking to ourselves, wouldn't it be dope if there was like a private membership club targeted at ethnic minorities in tech, for example, or like a private network. You pay, it's exclusive, whatever, but it didn't exist. So we were like, okay, why don't we just build that then, basically? So now going forward, that's what we're working on in 2025. You're going to see sponsorship in our newsletter, and it's just our products, but you might not even necessarily know. Do you get what I'm saying? You're going to be like sponsored by, this company, and it's like, it's ours. We're going to say, obviously, when you look deep into it, we're not going to be deceptive. But what I mean by that is that, like, fill in those gaps. So like I said, let's say no mattress company wants to sponsor your sleep newsletter. You go to a manufacturer and you build your own mattress business. Do you get what I'm saying? Or your own sleep guide or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. Because now you've got your audience, so you can almost like, again, add values to their life. But directly yourself, you're adding value as well. So that's so interesting. I was going to ask you, right? So like, you mentioned that you in New York, right, that you kind of figured out this idea, right? You figured out POCIT in New York as well. Is that where you kind of built most of the business? You built most of it in the States? Did you focus on doing it in the States first before coming to the UK?
So
back to the UK.
I came back to the UK pretty soon. I wasn't in New York for long. But what we did is when we were doing our media, we interviewed people in the States. We would do content about them. Then they would share it within their network. So we ended up with an audience, a community that's very centric to the US.
That's amazing.
And then at the end, we were like, this is actually a good thing, because most of the marketing and ad spend and recruitment dollars for this conversation is in the US. So at that time, if you said diversity in tech in the UK, primarily you'd get conversations around women in tech, which is valuable and necessary, but that's not what we were kind of exclusively focused on. In the end, our audience is like 60-70% women, but what I'm saying is that wasn't necessarily our kind of like complete focus. We were trying to have the conversation about what's it like to be black or black woman in the tech industry, not just etc. being a woman. So the US was far more willing to have those conversations and far more willing to invest in what we were doing and building. So that's how it worked out.
That's so interesting, because you're almost doing the harder graft first. Because a lot of people build in the UK and then want to go to the US and then build, because obviously the US is a bigger market.
Right.
Businesses are willing to spend more. They've got bigger budgets, etc. But you are able to build that there first. So coming to the UK is like, it's homegrown. You're from here. So, that's natural, let's say, right? But having to overcome that barrier, how did you overcome those barriers? Obviously, like building like relationships with like US clients,
you know what? It's like, it's
different cultures.
It's all in our head, I swear to you.
Yeah, you think so?
100%. You get on a Zoom call, whatever, you talk to them on Zoom.
Fair enough.
You interview and do content with people in the US, you publish it. You get me? Like whatever, you build those relationships over there. It's not hard. People are more than willing to do Zoom calls, to socialize on social media. Like, it's not a big deal at all. I genuinely believe that. Like, I'm not saying there are certain things where if you're doing a physical product, okay, you need to get distribution in the US. But if you're doing an online based platform, for example, there's nothing stopping you trying to get, maybe you want to do them all physically in person, but there's nothing stopping you either flying out to the States and doing a session of like 6-7 interviews. Or,
that's the plan.
Exactly. Or even just doing a few remote, trying it out, just experiment and be like, listen, I want to speak to Arlen Hamilton or the guys from Earn Your Leisure. Let's do an episode or whatever. It's not impossible at all. It's a lot of times it's like we just think we're invisible and we have to be here. You don't have to be here at all. The internet has opened it up 100%.
That's true. That's true. You can collaborate, and I think more cross collaboration is important. That's amazing, man. I really appreciate that. So we were talking offline, right? So you read a book, right? So 0 to 1. That's it. 0 to 1, right? By Peter Thiel, right? So that kind of changed your perspectives and made you kind of quit your job and kind of accelerate, getting into business, right?
Yeah.
Was that this business that you're doing now, Pocket.
Yeah.
Okay, it's Pocket. Talk a little bit about that.
So the book 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel obviously is a bit of a problematic character, shall we say, but his book was quite insightful, and it said that if you can do your 10-year plan in 6 months, you should do it, basically. And there are some of us who, if you're trying to be a doctor, you do need to do your 10-year plan. But for me, I was realizing that I was basically just like pretending and full of myself, because my plan was I want to work in startups for many years, learn the tricks of the trade, work underneath other founders, then go and do my own. So I was halfway to doing that plan. I was working at a startup called Urban Massage at the time, working with some young talented founders, but I realized that pretty soon I was like, well, I don't need to do this for 5 years, 6 years. I can just go and try and launch, because these guys didn't do that. And so the book definitely just kind of doubled down on what I was thinking already. But that's the power of a good book. Sometimes one line can be worth everything. That's why I never scrimp on books. £10 on a book can be worth millions. I swear to you. I mean, not.
If we're being honest, right?
Yeah, it can be. It sounds mad over the top what I'm saying, but like to a certain extent, there are certain books that I've read, and for my situation, it made me hundreds of thousands just based on the fact of like, it made me think different, gave me an idea, or it forced me to make a decision. It forced me to be accountable to myself, like quit my job and start a business.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us discount education because maybe it's so easily available, right? Like you can just now buy, you can buy Kindle book, you can access education on YouTube. So I think a lot of us discount the impact that it makes. But if we're being very honest, without education, can you speak?
100%
right? Like, I mean, we discount these things, right? Can you comprehend?
Yeah.
Can you have ideas? Like, the fact that you said that you read that and it sparked something, right? That's the point. Right, it did that for you. It accelerated something, a timeline for you way beyond, and then you were able to have some success with it. But I think a lot of us don't value sometimes the books enough. I don't think we don't. But yeah, I like to, if I can, read books. I can. So for me, one of the two books that I'm potentially trying to read right now are, and I'll share it with you after actually as well. Is one about instead of thinking of doing your goals in a year, think of doing them in 12 weeks. And then another one is 100 Million Offers by Alex Hermosi. I want to read that. I've heard good things. So that's another thing that I'm trying to look into. So I wanted to ask you, right? So, like two-sided, your business is like two-sided, right? So for you, how did you what was the focus area for you? Was it to try and build, your user base first? Or the client side, like how did you
It's a good question. So we probably focused primarily on building up our user base, and we basically had like a self-service kind of like job board where companies could just go in there and like put in their credit card details and pay. It was only when I hired my kind of like first salespeople that we decided to kind of do like real like outbound work and try to build those relationships and try to grow the business that way. So that was well into the journey. So the first part was basically just building up the value of having users and then allowing companies to kind of just enter their credit card details and pay if they wished. But I could afford to do that because I was very much a solo founder, no employees for like maybe 2-3 years. So yeah, I did it all myself because it was all just like, maybe I had a couple of freelancers writing articles every now and then, but like primarily it was just all the job board, just doing all the work, and it was a product that I had built, and it was all software.
Wait, you developed the software to do it?
The job board, yeah.
Of course, because you're a software engineer.
Yeah.
You developed it. So wait, so you said something about companies paying. So what? Like companies, if they wanted to put a job onto your job board, they would literally put the details, pay for it.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
And then I would approve it just in case it wasn't, fugazi, but then I would approve it and then it would go live on the site and that's it. So I built that with, as a software engineer, I built that myself. And then the rest of it, obviously we use WordPress for the blog. Yeah. We use MailChimp for our newsletter. Obviously not sponsored. If they want to pay us, they can. But like, I'm just saying these are the tools that are available for anyone to kind of get, their foot through the door and build their audience. But for the job board part at the time, I built it myself.
Yeah. And how were you building the audience? Like, how did you, like, what
social media? The thing about what we realized, and you probably have a similar dynamic with your show, is that when you would interview people, they would share it with their network.
Yeah.
So we would try to interview people who obviously had a large audience, but they weren't. The sweet spot we had is that there was a lot of people that had a large audience, but they weren't in TechCrunch because TechCrunch wasn't covering these sort of stories. So then they would share it with their network, and then we would piggyback and grow off that, basically. Similar to how how a lot of podcasts work. If you get a giant guest, now you're exposed to their audience, and some percentage will follow you what you're doing.
I love that. Like I like that because it's so like it's very ingenious. It's like you managed to not only find you found a proper gap. Not only that, it was in terms of for businesses wanting to like host their jobs, but then you also found the gap of there were people that had these amazing careers and they were being spotlighted as well, and then you almost like connecting that with people who may want to pursue careers or get that inspiration. So you were definitely covering a lot of gaps. So I'm not surprised as to why it's that successful. So I guess what would you say were some of the main challenges that you've had with, you know, POCIT so far?
It's always people in terms of like hiring, finding good people. Sometimes you've got to like let people go. That's not always fun. And yeah, it's always people. When it comes to scaling up a company, you know, it's just a collective of individuals, and you've got to kind of make it work and, you know, make sure that everyone's on the same page. And management is a skill that we're not all trained in, or, you know, you learn as you go kind of thing. You're somebody that might start off with a creative idea. Maybe you enjoy doing a podcast, for example, and then one day you've got a team and you've got to kind of like say, I've got to have the skill of creating a good show, but now I have to have the skill of managing people's psychology. Sometimes people aren't, you know, they're not feeling well, they're a bit down, or they're not feeling motivated, or you know what I'm saying? Or maybe they want to, you know, do something else within the business, but you can't give them that. So that's the hard part.
Yeah, let's talk more about that, because I had more questions about the teams, right? Like if you had a team, it sounds like you have a team. How big is the team?
About 7.
About 7 people. Okay, cool. So that's a big team. That's a big team, right? Talk about the difficulties of that and how you kind of navigate that as a leader for your team.
Yeah, so we're 7, we're all remote as well. So it's one of those things where the best thing to do is to find great people. You know, there's that cliche about, you know, trying to find like A players. What I would always try to do is find people who have like something in their track record that shows me that they're exceptional. It doesn't necessarily have to be they went to a great uni. It could be that maybe they went to an okay uni, but they basically studied, or they basically built something on the side, or basically at one point they took something seriously and they worked hard. That's what I have to always look for. So some people are like, oh, you know, why do companies always look for like top universities? I don't, but I understand why, because it tells me that at one point you took something super seriously. Because when for my master's degree, I went to UCL. So I've been to Kingston and I went to UCL. So I can see the difference. People at Kingston are not stupid. It's just basically like we didn't take life as seriously. A lot of us didn't. Whereas at UCL, everyone took everything seriously and they were very disciplined and they were very focused, basically. Yeah. So it's not about raw intellect. Obviously, there's some geniuses in the corner over there, but more times than not, it's not about raw intellect. It's about discipline and work. But so when I came into hiring, I wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to say, you know, UCL or whatever only. But what I did do is that if you went to like, or didn't go to uni, in fact, I needed to know that at one point you showed discipline and you know, mental fortitude and whatever you do. So I have to hire people that did apprenticeships and they worked at the Evening Standard, or I hire people that had a business of their own. And I was like, okay, I like what you're building here. Like if it doesn't work out, like come holler at me. And they're like, yeah, I'm looking for work. And then I hired them through that. So it's about finding the good people. And then once you've got them, giving them targets and goals, and it's getting out of the way to a certain extent, and just tapping in lightly every now and then to say like, how can I help you? How can I guide you? Whatever. And then the other thing is also incentivizing people. So if you're in sales, you need to have somebody who's incentivized by commission, or even the team. I try to give like profit sharing when I can, when a company when it makes sense, so that everyone feels like okay, cool, we're winning together, kind of thing. So it's about incentive, and it's about giving everyone the right incentives, finding good people, and kind of getting out of the way.
I like that, you know, especially about the profit share. I think that is good. Yeah, I think as founders, right, sometimes it's like you do want to try and give a bit of to your team, so that as you're growing, they almost, like you say, they have an incentive to want to see.
It's self-interest. It's self-interest. Exactly. And that's the problem. A lot of founders think that's like, oh, I don't want to do that because I want to keep. But it's like, yo, like you will grow more if your team cares like you care. If they power. Right? And one thing you have to realize also, they're never going to be as incentivized as you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't agree with making them say like, yo, we'll work as long as I'm working. No, do your 9 to 5, but during that 9 to 5, if you work hard and you play by your, do it right, you will be rewarded. Do you know what I'm saying? At this company, like if the company does well, you will do well. Do you get what I'm saying? So those are the things that I think is in your self-interest as an entrepreneur to do that, and it's short-sighted to not do that. I think a lot of founders are too busy trying to like cut the pie in their favor and not realizing you could grow the pie if everyone in the team like cared by 5% more or 10% more. So when did you know it was the right time to like start adding people, and who was like your first hire? First hire was I a writer, like a full-time writer, to kind of like help us with the media and the articles.
Yeah.
And that was because I just felt like I needed to free myself up and, you know, focus on kind of, instead of working in the business, working on the business, basically. So instead of like doing the, you know, every single daily task, I need to be taking a step back and saying like, where are the growth opportunities? What are the relationships I should be building? Then the next hire after that was I hired a guy called Jason, who's basically, he started off as like an account executive, like manager, sales type of role. Then eventually he became head of partnerships and eventually like COO. So he's grown with me over the last like 4 or 5 years. So he was actually my second like proper like sales hire. And that was important because like I needed somebody to, you know, drive these conversations and close up deals. So sometimes I might go to an event, meet somebody, and I'm like, all right, cool, I'll let Jason close that up so I can go out there and meet more people. And that way, you know, it's just about building extensions of yourself that make you more superpowered, basically. And that's what I needed. I need somebody who's as good as me, if not better, at closing deals, and I need somebody who's better than me at writing. And that's what I needed initially. That was my first 2 hires.
Okay, that's amazing. And this is the thing, right? Like with entrepreneurship, like you're wearing so many hats, you're everything.
Yeah.
If you think of any company you work for, right? You have your HR department.
Yeah.
You got your finance department. You got your marketing department. You got your sales, and then you got your tech, and then maybe you're in one of those environment in departments, right? So that's what it's like. You're almost trying to build your own departments, and hiring is important. But actually, let's talk about teams, right? What do you think are like some of the pros and cons though of having a team? Because of course the pros are that you have extensions of yourself, but what would you say are some of the cons and the, you know, difficult?
Cons is it cost. The cons is every month I got you know, do payroll, and it costs money. It's not free, it's not cheap. And you know, I hate to make it sound like paternalistic, but it is almost like having children, in the sense that if you have children or any kind of things that you've got, are kind of people you've got to look after. If the business is doing crap, they've still got to get paid. If the business is not doing well, like I've still got to find the money to pay these people and whatever, because they've done their part. And so it's my responsibility to make sure that my end of the bargain is fulfilled. So that's the cons of having a team. Primarily, it's just the cost. Apart from that, there's nothing but upside, because it's more people to do work. You've got more time, but obviously you've got to make sure that your company, you know, mathematically it makes sense to have those people on board.
I really appreciate you saying that. You have to pay people whatever the business is doing. And this is I think the reward and risk with being the CEO founder of a company, right? Is that yes, you do experience upside, but you also experience the downside.
100%.
If the business doesn't do well, the employees, they should still get paid, right? You might not. You might have to be like, you know what, I'm taking a bit of a pay cut, but you have to get paid because you're doing the job, right? That's the up and down of it, right? You know, a lot of people like to look at so and so made millions, but did you look at the risks that they took to get there? Did you look at the times where they wasn't paid? Right. And then everybody else was kind of paid within it. I think a lot of people don't like to look at that side. They look at he's a millionaire, he's a this, he's a that, but they took substantial risk to get there, right? It's not just as, you know, I think a lot of people like to simplify it to the point of, you know, it was just exploiting this. I don't think it's as simple as that, right? Like there's a lot more.
I mean, there are obviously employers that are exploited.
Yes,
we have to say that.
Definitely that.
And they pay their workers nothing. But obviously, as a general rule of principle, you as the owner, as the entrepreneur, are the person who's not guaranteed to get paid. Basically, everyone else is guaranteed to get paid as long as the business is still surviving to some extent. So if you make a loss that year, you've got to eat that. Do you get what I'm saying? And the employees get their salary. And then if the company goes bust, a lot of times investors also have preference shares where they have to get their money out first, basically, as well. So, you know, as an entrepreneur, that's the risk that you take. Yeah, it's crazy. So in revenue term, right? How much is POCIT roughly generated? I'm trying to go there. Do you know what? Over our best year we hit 7 figures, our best year.
Okay, wow.
And the last few years it went down, now we've climbed back up again. So basically,
so it's like been up and down.
So we grew towards 7 figures. We had a massive spike. Obviously, if you know current events, you would obviously know that obviously during 2021 too, there was a lot of attention around kind of like diversity and inclusion and all these buzzwords and whatever. So a lot of companies were hollering us that we had a massive up year. Then it trickled down slowly, then it trickled down a lot. But then what happened is, as an owner, actually this year, not this year, well, the beginning of 2024, I had to sit there and say, we need to pivot a little bit here.
Yeah, I was
so
gonna
we
ask
pivoted
that.
well away from like recruitment and started doing much more events, more media, striking up media partnerships. For example, we could say to a company like, I don't know, like Notion or Shopify, and say, we've got an audience of technologists, whether they're black, white or yellow. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Would you want, to pay us to get access to those technologists? And a lot of times they're like, yeah, we want to sponsor you, show you our products. Whereas before then, we were primarily focused on careers, recruitment, and obviously tech had a downturn in recruitment, full stop. So we were in a double bind in the sense that we were at the intersection of two things that were going down. One, companies started to care less. They stopped caring about kind of DEI as much. And then also recruitment went down. So we're like double intersection of that. So then I had to kind of sit there and be frank with myself and say, you know what, we got to kind of find other ways for it to make sense. And thankfully from that down year, we've doubled this year.
Okay.
Basically, yeah. So we're
From
on
the
our way
pivot.
back up. Yeah.
This is why you gotta do it. No,
Yeah.
but you've got these things are sometimes you do have to just have a serious look, right?
100%.
What made you? What prompted you to be like, you know what? Nah, let's not. What prompted you to pivot and not just be like, let's just stick through what we're sticking through?
So obviously every December, we've had it this year, me and Jason, who's my like COO, like we sat down and we look at the numbers every year and we say what made sense, what didn't, and where are we kind of slipping. And thankfully he's quite blunt with me and he's like, yeah, I think we're messing up here. I think you're messing up here. And I sit there and I take it and I'm like, I think you're right. And we just looked and said, we've got to try something else. We have to, like, there's no way. We can see the trend line. I have my Excel spreadsheet, all the revenue, the different business kind of sectors that we operate in, what's trending down, what's trending up. So we had a cold hard look, December 2023, and said let's try something different. And thankfully now December 2024, we doubled from where we were.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's amazing. I'm glad that you pivoted, and I think it's important for people to understand in business, right? Like sometimes, and you pivoting is not like some wholesale change pivot, like you change your whole business model.
Not at all.
It's a similar business model. You still have your existing stream, but it's like you've almost added another stream.
Yeah.
You've now thought, okay, so I still got my audience, but how can I still show value to them, but then also still monetize off that value? And like, you're absolutely right. Things like Notion is going to be helpful to your audience, right? And valuable to them. And I think this is why it's important to be able to just do that, and also sometimes not be scared of
100%
doing it. Sometimes it can be like, I don't want to, but you have to for the survival of what you're doing, right?
You have to.
Like,
And pay attention to the data. Like, for example, in your podcast, maybe there's one episode that you just see spike crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a guest that's kind of like a bit left of center. What happens if you double down on those kind of guests?
Yeah.
Those are the things. There's clues in the data, but sometimes we don't want to see it because we think, no, I'm this. This is a business podcast. If we have like this kind of guest, they just don't make no sense basically. But you've got to follow the market a little bit. You've got to just where's the tide taking you? Don't swim against it. I always say, like, and it's not my quote, I've just heard it, where like a good founder in a bad market, the market is always going to win. 100% every single time. So like if you're in a bad market, it's time to get out. Like, and I found myself thinking, we're in a bad market right now. And we need to get into a good market. What are the timeless markets? People are always trying to sell their services. Do you get what I'm saying? People are always trying to market to potential customers. And we have an audience. Can we be a media platform as well, in terms of like selling to media buyers as well as recruiters? And that's what we did.
It's important. So what's the overall like vision for POCIT? Where are you trying to kind of get it to?
I tend to operate on a year by year basis, but the overall vision is to be the kind of like the place for your career. If you're kind of part of our audience, we can help you across that full stack, which is beginning of your career, middle of your career, senior in your career, and whatever that may look like. That might look like events, that might look like software, that might look like online community. It could be many things, but we want to kind of be that cocoon around your career that basically, we're your friends. You go to us basically. So I think that's so interesting, and I think that it's good to have a vision. And I also understand the year to year, because I feel like for me things always change, and I'm happy I have my ideas, but I'm also happy to take in new information, like you say, new data, to see, okay, this is where we steer. This is how we serve the community. This is how we provide value, right? Because it can change. I mean, things that worked 5 years ago was valuable 5 years ago. It's not the same as it is today, to be honest. Look how like ChatGPT and AI is just like disrupted and changed 100%. Things without us even expecting it, right? So it kind of happens, right? So there's this scary statistic, right, about, startups. I think we all know it, right? 90%
of startups fail. That's what they say, right? What do you think are the reasons why your business was being able to be successful and is not part of that?
I think we led with consumer demand. So I tend to work on what I call projects. And then if the project takes off because there's some sort of consumer demand, then I turn it into a business. So for example, at that point, if no customer was asking, can I put your job there, whatever, after 6 months, I would have been like, oh, that was a nice project. I would have moved on. So psychologically, I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm a terrible entrepreneur, whatever, right? And the thing is about that stat, about 90% of startups fail. I'd love to know what is the stat on success rate of founders, individual founders, because you are not your startup, you are a founder. So most people that I know that have tried to be entrepreneurs over the last 10 years, most of them have made it, in the sense that most of them had a hit along the line. It's almost like being a musician. Eventually you might have a hit record. If you do it for 10 years and you're dedicated, eventually you will. So my business worked, and it was my second or third business. One of my other friends, it was his second or third business. And one of my friends, it was his first business. But that's kind of misconstrued in the data, because maybe we cumulatively all had 10 different businesses and only like 3 of them worked.
Yeah.
So you might say, oh, it's a 30% success rate, whatever. But as individuals, eventually we did it because we took it as this is our career. And that's what I see what people do, which I think is wrong, is that they don't take it seriously. I take it, when I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I took it like I wanted to be a lawyer. I took it with that much dedication. Like every day I was applying myself. Every day I went to work, 9 to 5. I grinded. Basically, I wasn't like, I'm gonna take a day off and, you know what I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, whatever. And then if one thing doesn't work, I'll try something else. I'll try a different business. I'll keep doing it until eventually I will succeed, basically. So that's where I can't tell you that like the recipe for each individual business, but I can tell you what's the recipe for you as an individual to be a business owner eventually, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Let's talk about the recipe for being a business owner, because I think it's important, right? I guess in your 7 years, you know, running POCIT, and not just that, even your previous experiences, what has surprised you about, you know, being an entrepreneur and, you know, also being a business owner?
What has surprised me? I think it's always people that are the most surprising thing. I gotta go back to people.
Is it that shocking?
Yeah, bro. Like sometimes 90% of my experience of people has been fantastic and hiring and whatever. But there's always like a 5-10% where you're like, oh, this is a nightmare. You know, I've had money stolen. I can't even go into it. Like, but I've had money stolen. I have people that you trusted, that you thought, okay, this is going to be someone great to work with and whatever. And then, you know, you think all skin folk are kinfolk, and you kind of get betrayed a little bit. And, you know, there's skullduggery a little bit. So there's an element where like sometimes you've got to stay, you know, clean-hearted, open-hearted, still be the nice person that you are, but eventually your naivety does leave you a little bit, and you have to basically see the full spectrum of what people can do and set things up in a way where you protect yourself. So that's having contracts, that's having incentives that make sense where everyone wins. So having an incentive-based contract where, you know, you make money when the more sales you make, versus, you know, having people that are just sitting there not doing much because, you know, they're getting paid either way, for example. Or I just think I learned a lot in terms of making sure the paperwork is right, have contracts in place, have them looked at. Don't just put it in ChatGPT. It's almost there, but it's not there yet. So have lawyers. And yeah, trust but verify. That's what I would say. I'm being vague because some of the situations that happened to me were very like legal, and I can't go into them too much. But like, yeah, you know,
that's crazy.
You can lose money if you don't have your paperwork handled right.
Yeah. You know,
so that's been the most surprising thing. Apart from that, in terms of like more positive stuff, I would say that people are rooting for you. They want to see you succeed. I know there's a lot of talk about everyone's hating on you, and you know, friends don't want to see you support, but like, you know, most people do want to see you succeed, and most people will help you, especially if you're young as well. If you're young and you send an email to someone further along, they will give you the time of day, especially if you send a very short, like brief email. Yeah. They will connect you to the right people potentially. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm not going to ask you about this situation. That's legal, man. We're not trying to get you into trouble. So what are habits, skills, and principles that you've brought to your business that has enabled it to flourish?
So I'll talk just like technical skills. Obviously, being a software engineer very much helped me. So a willingness to learn new things as well. So I didn't know how to use MailChimp before I jumped into MailChimp. I didn't know how to use WordPress. These are things that you have to just jump in and learn. And these things alone might be somebody else's career. So there's people out there who are like, I'm a newsletter specialist or I'm a MailChimp, but you're going to have to, as a founder, get used to just going on YouTube. Let me figure this out. The other skills, listen, get used to selling your venture and your business. Get used to potentially even putting your face out there. Right now, the world is not rewarding shy people. Got to keep that absolutely real. I know so many talented people who are just like too shy to get the phone out and be like, yo, this is what I'm working on, or let me shoot a little TikTok or an Instagram. And that is not the world we're operating in right now. There's I would say it's a gold rush, but it can be a gold rush if you're somebody who's willing to put yourself out there. Like you as a founder, give yourself a great advantage. And it might not have to be visuals. Maybe you do LinkedIn or whatever, right? Maybe the written word is more for you, but like, don't be shy and like, you know what I'm saying? Put yourself out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important. I think you're right. It's not rewarding shy people.
It's not, man. It's not. True. I don't know what benefit it has anymore. I'm like, yo, like, right now, like, there are people that are probably less talented than you getting it because they are just willing to put themselves out there.
But it's true.
Yeah. I also have this phrase that I call it like invisible competition. And these are like all the people that are like probably more talented, more skillful than me, but they just never are willing to like launch, or they're too scared to like think, or they second guess themselves. And I'm like, shout out to the invisible competition, because if it wasn't for you, I might not be here, kind of thing. Like, I hate to be facetious, but I use that as a you know, a calling card to get people off their ass and do something.
Yeah.
Because like, yo, like you're losing to people who probably you're better than, because you're not willing to, you know, put yourself out there and face maybe some potential embarrassment. Like, there's no, you know what I mean? Embarrassment is holding you back from money, from, you know, what you want.
Yeah. That's the thing. And embarrassment is, you probably forget in a few years anyway. I mean, like, let's be honest. Like, how many embarrassing things have happened in the news over the last 5 years? Are you going to be able to recount every one that you saw? No, probably unlikely.
9 times out of 10, it's in your head. Most people are not thinking about you.
Yeah.
They're
like
that.
Yeah.
The way that you're thinking about you is the way everyone's thinking about themselves.
Exactly.
Just constantly, oh, did I do this? Did I do that? And it's like, listen, no one's thinking about you, bro. And if they are, F them. Just get on with it.
Exactly. Oh, honestly, love that. So, you know, take us into your day in life as an entrepreneur. What is like really the truth about it that most people don't even know?
I wouldn't say there is the truth. How I operate is, I'm not one of these like 7 a.m., 6 a.m. early risers. I'm not going to front like...
I'll never be that.
Yeah, I've never been that. But I think I try to have at least 4 hours of work on my most highest goals, or whatever that may be. So I did a TikTok about the Eisenhower matrix, which basically is a framework to break down your tasks for the day. And it allows you to focus on like, what are your most important and urgent goals? And then also, what are your most important but non-urgent goals, your like long-term goals, whether that's maybe your health, or maybe that's, you know, features that you need to build into your product. So I tend to lock in for about 4 hours a day for my most important goals, and that's enough to keep me going day by day. In fact, to be fair, I think even 2-3 hours is enough, because I think most people spend 8 hours in their working hours probably doing 1 hour of non-essential work, and then the rest of it is just frittered away on social media or whatever, right? Yeah. So that alone is enough to give you a massive advantage over most people.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and I think it's important, especially as the fact that, like, you know, you've got to be self-motivated. And talking about self-motivation, right? You know, as an entrepreneur, you do have daily challenges, right? Like I said, you've got self-motivation that you kind of got to deal with. You got to, you know, fight fires. You got to try and figure out ways to, you know, make money, right? I guess what has been like the biggest adversity that you faced personally as an entrepreneur, and how did you kind of overcome it?
Biggest adversity, I would say, is normally personal stuff. Like at one point, I just had an absolute just disaster mental health run. Like I was having anxiety, I was having panic attacks out of the blue, and you know, it was something that, it was around COVID time, because it was like we didn't know what was happening, what was going to be the thing. People were getting sick around me, people died around me. So then I just, you know, couldn't hold it in, and I just started suffering from like, you know, these sort of like debilitating anxiety attacks. But at the same time, I started to run a company, so it's not like when, you know, you've got a 9 to 5, you just tell HR, yeah, I'm not really good right now, I need this time off. Where I couldn't do any of that, so I had to keep going, you know, went therapy, all that good stuff, and came over that, and now, you know, I've been fine for many years. But basically, these are the moments where you feel like, oh, this is not worth it, like I need to like take time and whatever, but you can't, because the baby will die if you know what I'm saying, if you think like, right now I'm still too much of an integral part. So it's more about juggling who you are and what you're going through with what the business needs as an entity that's separate from you. And there are people at that point, I had employees people paying their mortgages off this. I can't just be like, you know what I mean? I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, sorry guys, like I need a sabbatical. I'm gonna take 6 months off. Or no, it's not that.
Yeah. How do you deal with that pressure of, you know, having that responsibility? I know you joking about like being a parent.
Yeah.
Technically it is like you are. How do you deal with that? And how do you make sure that how do you kind of motivate yourself to make sure that you keep on showing up? Because the reason why I'm asking you, because I understand that as an entrepreneur, like I've got my goals. So I think I'm not even going to lie. I think I'm at the point where I don't even like need self-motivation. I think it's just, I've got a goal, I'm achieving it.
Yeah.
It's happening, man.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm doing it.
There's no
like,
choice.
Whatever
Like,
it is. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm in that mode. I'm in such a militant mode right now where you do get the hint of, I don't want to call it weakness. Let me know. Doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do get that doubt sometimes. Like, it's weird how it works because like days you be fine and then one day you just be like, you have a doubt of one little thing and then it's like, oh. Yeah, but anyway, how do you kind of deal with, you know, that pressure of having to continue to show up? And how do you also motivate yourself to continue showing up?
The pressure side of it is, I'm very much big into like data. So, you know, let's say for example, the pressure of like paying people, that's kind of how the question kind of started. And I very much know like always like how much do we have in our bank? How much runway do we have? So like if we carried on not making, if we didn't make a single dollar this year, how long would we have until we run out of money? I know these numbers, like, do you know what I'm saying? So like I never get pressured month to month to pay people salaries because I'm like, oh, I know we're good for this many months or whatever. So many of us might come from a background where, let's say you're a creative, you're not good with the numbers, you're not good with having those spreadsheets where you're like, okay, I'm tracking everything here down to the last penny here. So that's, data gives me control and the data allows me to feel less pressure, basically. Motivation wise, like you said, like I'm very similar. It's very hard for me to answer those questions about like how do you stay motivated, because a part of it is just kind of who I am. And at one point I made a decision. I said, I'm doing this and that's it. Do you know what I'm saying? So I never have to like think to myself, oh, like, why am I doing this? And like, should I do? No, it's just like, yo, this is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do, and I'm gonna do it. So what I struggle with is giving advice to people who tell me this is what they want to do, and then I see them and like they're living a completely contradictory lifestyle to what they've told me. So that's where I've struggled with, even with friends, where I had to just fall back and say, do you know what? Like, I love you as a friend, and we're not going to talk about your work or anything like that, because you be lying to me, like, and to yourself, like, and you're lying to yourself. Like, you told me you want to have these big goals, and you know what I'm saying, but I don't see no big movement. So whatever. Yeah. So motivation is not something that I've struggled with. I think if you are struggling with motivation, you just be honest with yourself. Like, is this really what you want to do? Really, like, because there's a book, as a philosopher I wanted to read. I haven't read his, I think he's called Gerard something. But anyway, his book is about memetics, about how so many of us and society is based on people just copying other people. Where you see what others do and then you try to like copy it, basically, and how much of us just operate on that thing. So someone might look at your podcast, oh, I would like to have a podcast and you know, be like SAVVYWALLET, and it's like, but do you really want the work, or do you just want to have the outcome of what you see my man's got with his followers and whatever, like. So sometimes it's like we have to be honest with ourselves, like, where's our motivation coming from? Like, and I think when it's genuinely from internal you know, desire, I want to create, this is something I want to build, then it's very hard to not be that person. But when it's like, oh, you know, maybe you're attracted to the end result, I want to have those many followers, or I want to have that money in the bank account, but do you want that journey?
A lot of people don't want that journey,
and I think that's what it is. And I think
the late nights, they don't want the late nights, they don't want the long hours, they don't want to like, oh my god, like, I'm not sleeping tonight.
They want the destination. They want the destination, and then they wonder like, how do I motivate myself to walk? And it's like, well, I'm motivated by the walk. I like the walk. It's a nice scenery for me. This is what this is part of what I signed up for, basically. And I'm willing to do this to get to, do you know what I'm saying, where I'm trying to go.
And they're not walking their destination. That's why they can't walk it. Right? They're not motivated because that's not their path. They're walking somebody else's path. They looked at somebody else's path, like you said, and think, oh, I want to walk that, but that's not your path. And
I think where the culture is messed up, obviously, with social media, is that many people are portraying just the good side. They're flexing, they're portraying, you know what I mean? And I had a conversation with another business owner friend of mine, and she was basically saying that she felt like, you know, it was a down year for her business, and she was like, you know, is the market bad or is it just me? Because I'm going on social media and my competitors are flexing. And so she went on Company's House, did a little Company's House scroll, as we call it. Start seeing that, yo, they're making less money than me, like, but like, you wouldn't know that. You would think that everyone is having the up year, and so sometimes social media is really warping everyone's mind in terms of what they want, in terms of what they think is possible, in terms of like what is actually achievable, and in terms of how glamorous something appears to be when it's not glamorous and it's not probably doing, you know, the ventures are not doing that well, but it appears that way. So you think, oh, I want that, and it's like actually they don't even have that. And two, do you even really want to do the work to really have that? Anyways, but that's I can go on about social media, the distortion that's having on a lot of people's minds.
It is, yeah. We definitely got to be careful. That's why I like to have these real honest conversations with people to just talk about like the other side of business. There are fun times, there are good times. I'm enjoying it. You know, I'm both like 9 to 5 entrepreneur. I'm enjoying it, but I can also admit that there are times where like, oh yeah, this is hard. I'm gonna have to do work. Like for instance, I know I'm traveling now. What we were recording on Saturday, a week of head on a Monday. I know I've got a batch edit or batch not edit because I'm not really doing it completely all myself now, but batch kind of set up everything just so when I'm on holiday I can actually enjoy it. Right, that's the difference. That's the sacrifice we have to make. So I'm not gonna necessarily take like a full break over Christmas like other people. I've got a set up for 2025 and think about 2025, and that's just the sacrifice I have to kind of make with it.
So at the moment you're still editing like most of the stuff. Is it because like you feel like your eyes
no, I'm not doing the editing.
Oh okay, you got to edit. Yeah, okay.
Now I have, but yeah, still I have to still oversee oversee it, so I still have to work rather than I'm thinking of if I didn't have the business, I'll have my feet up, man.
It's true.
You know what I mean? I'm enjoying that weekend, I'm enjoying the next week. You know what I mean? Then I'm thinking about my holiday. That's not happening. I've got to think of 2025. Do you know what I mean?
You got bigger things in mind.
Exactly. So yeah, it's important. So we talked about ingredients, right? What do you think are the ingredients for a successful entrepreneur or to be successful? What do you think are some of those ingredients required?
It's still similar to what I said. I think you've got to really want it, and you've got to really be honest with yourself. Is that something that you want? Because I've had, you know, friends of mine who were doing the journey along with me, and I didn't think in the end that it was something they really wanted. They wanted money, but like when it came down to like, let's do some market research, let's go on the street and ask people like, what do you think about this product, whatever, they didn't want to do it. But when it came down to having like a 9 to 5, they actually were quite hardworking because there was a guaranteed outcome, there was guaranteed money. So be honest with yourself. Is it something that you really want to do? Are you confident also speaking up about what you're doing? Like I said, shyness is not your friend in this situation anymore. And yeah, like those are the two main ingredients. Just being willing to put yourself out there, willing to work, obviously, and willing to be honest with yourself about, is this actually what I'm actually interested in doing? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, and also, but each business also has different characteristics that you need. For example, as a podcaster, you probably need to be a clear and concise communicator. You've got to enjoy and be interested in other people. But if you're building a B2B SaaS software, do you get what I'm saying? Maybe you can be the person who builds the product, and then you have a salesperson who does all that stuff, talking to the clients, for example. So there's different characteristics for each individual business. But at the same time, I think the macro characteristic is like, yo, I really want to do this. And that's such a cliche answer, but like you'd be shocked how many people are thinking they want to do this, but they actually don't. Like, and they're consuming content, and they consume my podcast, maybe your podcast. They're watching right now, and they're thinking, because they think it's sexy, and it's not something that's actually what they really want to do. Do you know
maybe I'll do the process of creating a podcast one day, not right now.
Way
into the future, so people actually understand how much time gets into it. I mean, you run a podcast as well, and it's not easy. I think I've said this to people, and you know, I don't want people to think that this is easy. It's not. There's so much preparation that goes into it. I don't think people understand the steps of us getting here. We've not just come onto the couch today and we're just sitting here. Basically is what I'm trying to say. Right? There's a lot of conversation. We've had conversations. There's prepping, right, that you have got to do.
But it's also reps as well. Like, how many episodes have you done?
A lot.
Exactly. And there's a crazy stat where like, I think most podcasts don't get past 5 episodes. So somebody was asking me one time, like, I've just launched my podcast, like give me some advice. And I was like, listen, at least record 10. See how it goes. Like, don't just tap out, because most people just tap out because there's no reward. And in the beginning, no one's listening.
And it's hard.
And it's hard.
they really like, man, it's not just sitting on the couch and thinking, and
also like one episode, our first episode, we had like 20 listeners, and it could have been easy to be like, yo, we're done. Do you know what I'm saying? But we just just kept building, kept plugging away. So a lot of times people are not willing to put in those reps. It's like going to the gym and thinking, why am I not hench yet? After like one session, you wouldn't ask in any other domain, why am I not hench yet? Why am I not this yet? Like, you know, it takes time.
Yeah. It's crazy because you're absolutely right. You won't go to a company 9 to 5 and say, why am I not CEO yet? You understand there's a path that you have to walk through. You understand it's going to take time for you to get up there. Some CEOs have become CEOs over 20 years.
Yeah.
Facts, right? Yeah. That's happened.
The Nike CEO has been there for 30 years, I think.
Exactly.
He from intern to like, I mean, that's quite rare, but in terms of even for a general career, from company to company, it's going to take you 20. And that's what I said about, I took my entrepreneurship career like a normal career, like being a lawyer, for example, or being like any exec. I said, okay, I'm at the ground floor right now. Yeah. I'm willing to put years into this. Even if I have to go back to do 9 to 5, I'm still, in my mind, psychologically, my identity is I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. And I'm going to keep building and be dedicated towards it so that in 10 years, it works out. And that's what I did. Yeah. Do you get what I'm saying? From 22, 23, when I started getting real money from entrepreneurship, it was 30. Do you get what I'm saying? My first employee was 31. Do you get what I'm saying? But like, that's not the story that you hear. You're normally used to seeing social network, Mark Zuckerberg, 19, dropping out of uni, and all of a sudden it's billions. But the narrative is not the reality.
And that's what I've been finding out through these conversations, this podcast, is literally, like you say, you got to treat your, you know, being an entrepreneur like a career, like have your step-by-step goals in what you're doing. So yeah, talking about entrepreneurship, let's talk about wealth, right? Building wealth. What's like your building wealth strategy?
Yeah. So I'll say what is applicable to everyone. I definitely think everyone should really be investing in like low cost index funds. If you don't know what index fund is, it's basically a collection of multiple stocks in one basket, basically. So that's versus buying an individual stock, which may go up and down. With a low cost index fund, you are diversified across 500 companies. The most famous one is the S&P 500. The reason why I recommend that, obviously, because it's so highly diversified, your risk is spread, and more times than not, it returns greater than what an individual stock picker can do. Most day traders are not making money despite what the core sellers are telling you. Yeah. So I recommend that, and starting early, because obviously the power of compounding will tell you that like your money will build on top of each other and just snowball basically, and then eventually in 20 years, 30 years, you can be a guaranteed millionaire. So how many of us want to wait until we're 50 or 60? We want the millions today, innit? Do you know what I'm saying? So that is what is applicable, I think, for most people. Aside that, obviously I own businesses. I invest in, you know, index funds. I do own a few individual stocks. I also do some startup investing as well. So that's probably not applicable to everyone. So I try to put my money into businesses. And if you're somebody who makes money through salary, unfortunately, it's very difficult to build wealth through your salary. So you need to funnel your salary money into as much assets as possible. Now, most people do it via their property, which is absolutely fine. I think in the UK, in London, it makes complete sense to do that. There are certain markets where it probably makes more sense to rent, but not in the UK. Yeah. But then whatever you have left over, as much as you can, as early as possible, start building it into, into putting it into the stock market through index funds.
Yeah. What was like the rationale for you to decide, okay, you want to invest in index funds? We'll talk about startup investing a little bit later. But what was the rationale that you wanted to do majority index funds? How much roughly is it index funds versus like?
So it's actually interesting. So like even within my company, whatever cash we have, like when we have it reserves, I put it in treasuries and index funds. And then even my own personal money. Yeah, that's what I do too. So mostly it's probably 80-90% like index funds. I used to have some crypto, but I'm not the biggest like crypto believer, I'll be honest with you. Like I'm kind of skeptical, but maybe that's a whole nother like religious war that we don't want to get into, because some people are really like true believers. Why I decided to do index funds, I read books and the data was clear that most individual stock pickers don't outperform the market, and by the market that means the S&P 500, which is the 500 biggest stocks in the US. So most individual stock pickers don't beat the market, and over the longest time period, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, this is it's returned 12-13% on average. And if you had put in money 20, 30 years ago, even a relatively insignificant amount, it would have snowballed into a larger amount. So there's, famous stories of guys that worked out, like, they were truck drivers, they put in $100 a month, for their whole careers, and they retired with millions basically. And it's not a guarantee. Investing does come with risks. Maybe the market might collapse every now and then, but generally speaking, it tends to trend upwards. So that's why I'm very much based on just like, what is the data? What is the evidence? And the evidence is primarily there, not in, let me buy Tesla and let me see what happens and whatever. And the thing is also, we confuse confuse someone's luck with strategy. So like, let's say you know somebody that bought Bitcoin, Tesla, and Apple 13 years ago, and it went amazing, right? That probably was an intelligent move from them, but also at the same time, they easily could have picked three or four of the wrong companies or 3 or 4 of the wrong cryptos, basically, right? So don't confuse that with a good strategy. It's not necessarily applicable to you. You want to pick the strategy that 9 times out of 10 works for 9 times for most people, not the strategy that worked for that one dude that you know, and he's got a great story. Is that a strategy that is universally applicable? Because it's probably not. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing, like applying something that has worked for the few to the masses, you have to think of it that way. If you're not even people who are seriously dedicated to stock picking still don't win. Yeah. That's just what it is. That's just what the data shows. And I think people have to understand that. But talking about, I like to give both sides. What would you say though are the cons of your wealth building strategy? It'd be good to hear what you think.
Cons are that you miss out sometimes on those large outsized returns on the more riskier assets, basically, right? So I have owned crypto. I probably would have made more money if I'd held my crypto to this day, basically. But I had to have conviction in what I believed in terms of like, what does the evidence show to me? And to me, I just don't believe in it as an asset class. So that's the con. The con is that sometimes you lose out on those outsized returns when you take less risk. But I'm looking at it from the vantage point of 40 years and not the last 10 years.
Okay.
And that's the difference, because I don't know what the next 30 years may hold for crypto or for Tesla or any individual company. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So what index funds in particular are you looking at yourself that you currently kind of invest in?
Very boring, just S&P 500.
Okay, you're S&P 500.
I'm completely S&P 500, yeah.
Oh, nice. So you really betting on America's future?
I mean, America's the largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
It has the largest companies in the world.
Cool.
Most of the technology that we utilize is from the US.
To be fair, yeah.
And I'm not bullish on like UK market. Hasn't returned much well. Europe also, and I think Asia is just too opaque for me. I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about China. I'm not going to sit there and pretend that I know enough about Chinese companies and whatever, right? So for those of us who live in the kind of like non-Asia part of the world, like US dominates the reality. This episode will go out on YouTube, an American company, or spun out of Google.
That's true.
Or maybe you're listening on Apple Podcast app, right? So in some way you're touching US companies, and not just US companies. You're talking about companies that come from one state and one strip of like one state. Like you're talking about San Francisco. Like they're actually insane. Like that California is a bigger economy than the UK, and it's not even a country. It's a state within a country. So I'm not here on some pro-rah America thing, but I think just looking at the cold hard facts is the best performing index. If you want to diversify, there's like world indexes that you can do, which might be a thing. But even then, they're still heavily weighted towards the US.
Yeah,
because the
60%.
So it's like either way, like it's hard to avoid.
Yeah.
The other thing I think what is good is if you have a large cash sum, sometimes right now just putting your money in high savings interest or treasuries where you can get almost 4 or 5%. For my company, I do that, and it's like you're taking no risk basically. So that is also like a good strategy for like just like very like guaranteed cash flow. Like I think Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett's company, they've got a lot of their money in treasuries. I think almost you're talking 100 billion. 100 billion, yeah, because he's out of the market. He's the Olympian of investors, so he can actually time the market and whatever. So he's sitting on the sidelines waiting for a market correction, a crash. So right now he's probably making 100 million on just like interest on his cash. So like if you got a lot of money, sometimes just 4 or 5% is like for no risk is amazing.
To be fair, I do for my business. For my business funds, I'm using savings account now.
Smart.
That was something that I was thinking of because there's some good ones. I think I've mentioned it on. I think we've mentioned that they're a partner. So Tide. So that's who I use.
Yeah, Tide is dope.
They're great, right? Because the percentage is good. It's like 4%. So for me, it's like why not? Because at one point I was getting to a point where I was like, wait, I've just got all this money sitting in this account. Like inflation's what like.
4%.
Let me find a savings account, man, for it, because it's the truth. Because the way we have that mindset for our personal finances, or maybe you don't, but hopefully you do. But we don't do that for the business. We should also do that. Let that be making money while I'm sitting there just doing nothing. So I think that's quite interesting. I'm going to look at the treasury stuff actually. That's quite interesting. We could talk offline. You could tell me.
I mean, to be fair, like I think if you're getting like 4 or 5%, it's basically the equivalent. US treasuries are basically paying that much money as well right now. So, there's nothing.
Yeah, so if you get a savings account 4%, it's a great deal, right? Yeah,
it's a great deal.
You got to take advantage of this
1,000%.
stuff because it's not gonna. I know it's.
Because I think they're just putting it in treasuries as well. I think that's what the bank does to give you that interest.
Probably.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're probably skimming a little bit, but like, what can you do?
We know they're using our money for stuff, innit? That's so interesting. Okay, cool. I like that. So awesome. And what's like your horizon for your investments? For you, are you thinking it's something that you want to kind of, it's for like 20, 30 years? You have a horizon
so
for it?
I think my goal, so I'm 36 now. I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to be working for the next, I think my goal is to retire within the next like 6-7 years, like 10 years, maybe 10 years at best.
You want to retire in 10 years?
When I say retire, I mean I don't want to do anything that I don't want to do. So I might still write a book or whatever, like, you know what I'm saying? There'll be some income generation, but it's not going to be like I have to clock in somewhere or run a business that I don't want to run. So I'm trying to implement the kind of, they call it a 4% drawdown strategy, which basically means if you've got your money invested in, you know, the market or property, whatever, you can safely draw down 4% each year and not eat in to your asset, basically. So imagine you've got, let's say, £1 million in an index fund that's making 10% a year or 12% a year. Every year you could take out like 50,000, which is like 4 or 5%, maybe even 6%, 60,000 for example. But because your asset is growing by 13%, that money is still not going to be eroded. Whereas if you just have £1 million in cash and you start taking down 4 or 5%, eventually you'll run out of your money, basically. So that's the way to kind of technically retire off your stock market investments, basically. There's a great book called The Simple Path to Wealth. Where he outlines that strategy, basically. And so that's what my aspiration will be to do. That might be me end up selling the company or, you know, selling other assets that I have, and then eventually, I don't foresee myself working into my properly working as a business owner into my 50s and 60s.
Really?
Yeah, it's not for me. It's a very like, it's a young man's game in a sense that like, unless you get to the level where like you're completely out of the game, where your employees are doing everything. Yeah. And maybe that's where I'll get to, where I'm like a chairman, basically, just a figurehead. But as I do it today, I'm very much in the trenches, still, you know, overseeing everything, still making sure that everyone's still doing hand-to-hand combat. I don't want to be doing that in 15 years. I'm tapped out. Yeah.
That's funny. I'm gonna be using that hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah, bro.
I like that.
You're firefighting every day sometimes.
It's true. No, it's true.
And when you're the CEO, the most unsolvable problems come to you. If they're solvable, it would have been handled down the chain. But it's when everyone, like we've got this problem on social media, like we're getting cancelled, or you know, this customer wants to leave. Like those are the problems that come to you as the CEO. So you're like, oh damn, like
it's true, man. You gotta be a martial artist. You gotta be a firefighter.
Jiu-jitsu.
All of it. Okay, I love that, man. So you also talked about, you know, startups. Talk about a little bit about that, how you kind of invest in startups, and also what you're potentially, because I know that you're also potentially looking for more startups. Yeah. So can you talk a bit about that?
So the kind of startup investing portion of my career is quite new, actually. So I am a scout for a venture capital firm based out of the States called Zeal Capital. So Zeal Capital is a fund that invests in founders, but they have a $50 million allocation for Black founders, basically in partnership with Barclays, I believe. And they have got scouts. So a scout is somebody who can invest on behalf of a VC firm. So what they have done is they've gone to 10 or 12 individuals who are entrepreneurs, who have networks, and they say your allocation is 150,000 for the year. You can invest in 4 or 5 founders, early stage founders, and they have approached me and given me the opportunity. So I have 150,000 or odd roughly to invest in Black founders here, primarily in the UK. I've made 2 investments already. One of them is Tressly, who Antoinette was the founder of, it. She's been a guest on the show, who's amazing. So that's one of my investments. I made another one and I'm doing 2 more.
Okay.
So I'm still taking like inbound. So if you've got a startup idea or you've started something, you've got traction, so long as your valuation is under 5 million USD.
Okay.
I will send you the kind of link, maybe put it in the show notes if you can. And that's something where, you know, should be of interest. And then outside of that, also once the program ends, I'm still going to probably carry on and like invest in founders. It probably won't be like 25K per entrepreneur, but like it probably will be, you know, I'm trying to dip in there and see like what I can do and put my money to work basically. Because I at the moment, I do have leverage in terms of like I have, you know, some reach with my media company. So if there's something where it makes sense, where someone's working on something that could, you know, I can add value to, where not only am I just money, but I can also give you distribution and reach and you know, network. That's where I might end up doing after this program's done.
Yeah, and I think as well, you can almost build up like a bit of a waiting list of people, you know, where you can go back to Zil and be like, look, I've got these other, we ate up this amount. We got these other great people that you might want to be, and you almost have a portfolio. They can go back to them and they could be like, let's put in another meal or whatever. So I think that's quite important. People, look, if you got a business, please do check this out. I think these kind of opportunities, especially like, what's great is that Antoinette, when we spoke to her on the podcast, if you go and listen to that podcast, she was saying that she was seeking investments. I'm very happy. It's like a full circle moment. We're now speaking to Michael, who now invested in it. So that's crazy. This is how sometimes you just got to put this stuff, and she wasn't scared to say that, right? Some people may be scared to say, oh, like, you know, I don't want to say like I'm looking for investment. And look, it's happened, right? She's manifested it. It's happened for her. So if it is something that you're interested in, you got a business, and please do.
To cut you off, I just want to say about Antoinette in terms of like why I did invest and what the lesson is for everyone else is that when I had invested, it wasn't like they hadn't started. They had an app. They already had. So just to give clarification, it's a app for black hairstylists, basically, where they give them software where they can take payments, take bookings, whatever, have a calendar, market to their clientele. But she also built a community. They have an award show for black hairstylists, right? They do events, they do education. So all of that was done by the time I put a single penny into the company. So often I'm chatting to people and they're like, well, I'm not starting until I get the money. And it's like, I think as an investor, that's not a tantalizing prospect. I want to jump on a moving train. I am willing to invest in people if they just got an idea and they're really, you know, getting it moving, but they've got a background that's quite credible. Like they built something before. So at least I know that you're not just a faker. Let's be real here, right?
You're just talking.
Yeah, just talking, innit? You know what I mean? But so that's why I just commend her and Samuel, who's our co-founder, for just like the amount of work they put in even before they raised money. And that's the sad thing. I think if they were based in the US, they would have raised like millions by now. But based here, like there's not a lot of investors that understand what they're working on. And the ones that did are probably, you know, don't have any buy-in from their kind of backers. Like, so like, you know, 2 years ago, maybe a black founder working on a solve a problem for black people could have got money, but now it's very difficult. It's dried up. So, this is part of the reason why I decided to do the program. It wasn't like I was like, I got plenty of free time to, you know what I'm saying? Like, do you know what I mean? And even financially, this is not something that's going to like move the needle for me because the money's not my money. It's Zil Capital's money. I get carry. So that means if it does well, I get a certain percentage, but it's not going to be like, you know, Tressly would have to be like $1 billion company for me to like see some real return from it. But I'm doing it because I know what it's like to be out here trying to build. And I want to funnel that US money this way because so often I'm doing the opposite, which is like I'm working with the US, get my money from there, and I want to be able to show people that listen, we can get that US money and like funnel it here into a smaller market, but we can, you know, we can do that work. Yeah,
it's important. And look, Antoinette is a great founder. If you listen to the episode, you understand that she put in a lot of work, and that's what you were saying is the skin in the game. She put a lot of skin in the game in what she was doing. She knew her market very well. She built things, was putting her own money into it, putting her own time into it, was planning to go full time. So she very quickly understood that. And I think you're right. Like, I think it's definitely, if I was to invest in somebody and I saw that it was somebody like Antoinette, I definitely would feel comfortable doing that because I know, wow, you're already working on this business. You're already doing things. You kind of know where you kind of want to go. I'm kind of giving you money to help you grow that further, right? So I think it's super important.
And just a quick parable, like I went to the award show and they were like announcing like product launches for things that I didn't even know. I was like, right, like that's dope. Like, so for example, like I don't know if it's top secret, but essentially they kind of have managed to get a location to give them access to their location for like 2 years to essentially build like a WeWork for like hairstylists. So like imagine you're an independent hairstylist but sometimes you need a location so you can pull up some membership, whatever, but obviously you've got to use Tressly to use it and whatever. So I was like, oh wow, like this is really smart. And then I was like, oh, hold on, actually, I'm the investor here, so I should be happy. Like, but I was just impressed, and I was like, wow, this person. And at that point, the check hadn't cleared.
Okay.
So she was like hustling to get opportunities and make things happen. And I was like, okay, I bet on the right horse here, I think.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy because I think I might have put a clip of us talking about that.
Yeah.
I don't think she had maybe formalize it, but I think she was talking about like in terms of like how the industry is changing.
Yeah.
And how she kind of sees it that way. So I'm glad to say that she's done that.
Yeah.
We're gonna definitely talk more about that. So let's talk about, you know, tech innovations, right? So what impact do you think AI will have over the next 5 to 10 years? You know, you being a software engineer and you being quite tapped into tech.
So I would say that I think in the short term, there's going to be a window where AI and human combination will be the most powerful. So it's kind of very similar to chess in the sense that like when AI or machines started to play chess, human plus AI was more powerful than just AI basically. And that existed for like 10 years. Then after that, now no human being can beat a machine basically. Like even the greatest chess player in the world can't beat, you know, the smartest AI. But I would say that we've got as a parable, the next 5-10 years, a human being powered with AI is going to be supercharged and do amazing work. Then I think in the super long term, I think no human being will be able to compete with an AI, in my personal opinion, in terms of like sometimes like knowledge work, creativity work. I seriously worry in that sense. But in the short term, right now, there's opportunity. I'm shocked. I met somebody who worked at a very large corporation and they weren't using AI in any shape to even ideate ideas. They were working on a project. I said, why don't we just like put it into the AI and see what it comes up with? And it came up with 10 or 12 ideas and they were like, oh, wow, this is actually quite good. I'm like, how are you working in a big corporate and you haven't thought to do this? So right now, if you are somebody who's using ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity to like research and ideate ideas, like, you know, you're going to do well. The thing is that with AI, the reason why it's difficult is that like it's the quality of the prompt that you put in is what is the difference maker. So some people are just using it, oh, give me some ingredient list, okay, whatever. But if you're somebody who's very adept at using these tools in terms of prompts, you can get a lot out of them. Do you know what I'm saying? You have to get used to understanding how it works. So you might say, imagine you are, you know, a sales executive working at whatever company you're working at. You're meant to be targeting these sort of industries, whatever. Speak to me in a short, concise manner. Give me your 10 best ideas and iterate. And then just see what it comes up with. Then based on that, say, okay, I like these 3 ideas, develop these further. And it's not going to give you the finished article, but you should be using it as a springboard. You should be using it as almost like a very super smart graduate level intern who's able to give you ideas and feedback. Then if you're using things like Perplexity now, I use that all the time for researching topics on my podcast. So Perplexity essentially is like a search engine. It basically is like Google, but it just gives you the answers with the citation. So now I would say 9 out of 10 of my searches are on Perplexity, not Google. Then for my email client, I use a tool called Superhuman. It's like a premium email tool. And essentially it writes most of my emails for me, basically. So very rarely are you going to catch me writing a long email that's not AI generated, because it's like an email tool that basically has email AI embedded into it. So for example, some people might be writing an email, going on to ChatGPT, tweak it, bring it over. I'm literally just in my inbox just saying like, okay, just reply back and say, yes, thank you. And it will just give me a reply. I just hit send, basically. So there's that. But these are the things that give me back 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day. And compounding over different workflows, eventually I'm working 10 times more productively than the average person.
That's crazy.
So that's why I think AI is going to be super powerful in the hands of people who are already productive, because you're already looking for the cheat codes. If you're not that person, start to be that person. Because I feel like the way you got your hand over your mouth, you're like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah, man.
You're like, oh my God, you're scaring me. But then also, the way I also use AI as a developer is obviously like there's tools where it makes writing code significantly easier. So it makes, you know, the mid-level or senior engineer probably 2, 3, 4 times more productive. So there's that. But then also, if you're somebody who's not even a coder, now you can go on things like Claude and it can not only generate the code, it can also give you a view of what the app looks like with the code almost fully functional.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine was working on an idea and he showed me his like MVP, his minimal viable product, and it was all just a Claude interface. So you enter this, you do that, and you know, and it was taking me through pages, and I was like, this guy can't code for nothing, but it's basically able to like give him something that he can pitch to clients now. So like, yeah, use these tools and get used to them, because I think it will give you a significant advantage over the next, you know, 5-10 years. But I think in the long term, the machines will win, and yeah, that's my thinking. That's
crazy.
That's my unfortunate prediction.
They'll win. Oh. So then what would the world be like then? What were you going to be doing?
That's a very good question. I think some people say like, oh, but then who's going to like run the companies? And sometimes you might even just have like, I don't know, in 30 years, you might have just AI running companies. Yeah, AI CEOs. What? Because what happens when the AI can make a rational decision much more than any human can with no emotion? There might be somebody saying, I approve, or there might be a board of directors that say I approve.
Scary, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is now we're getting into the realm of science fiction, and this is probably not relevant because in 30 years, who knows what we'll be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? But like,
crazy.
in the short term, it's be empowered to use and understand these tools.
I like the whole thing of like being a bit more productive with automation. I'm also thinking of how can I be a bit more productive with, you know, elements of what I do as well. I think it's important to just spend a bit of time doing that. Michael, it's been great speaking to you today. We spoke so much about like, you know, your journey, the actual realities of the journey. So thank you so much for like just sharing that with us and being honest about it, and sharing, you know, how you're kind of building wealth. I think it's very important for people to understand that, you know, there is a journey to this stuff. And I really particularly like the fact that you said, you know, you kind of took, you know, being an entrepreneur seriously. You kind of planned it like you being a lawyer. Not many people think of it like that. And I think that's what it is. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram or TikTok, Michael Berhane. I should be there. You can find my podcast, Techish Pod, on YouTube and on Instagram as well. We're trying to grow our YouTube. We've been mainly like an audio only podcast, but now we're trying to do the visuals. And yeah, you can also subscribe and follow POCIT, POCIT. We're on Instagram, our newsletters, the POCIT Weekly. Subscribe to that too. Yeah. If you want to learn about what we're doing and what's going on in the tech world related to Black and underrepresented folks.
Amazing. No, it's been a great conversation. We definitely should have a part 2 in the future, and definitely talk about how POCIT's going, maybe other ventures that you're doing, maybe more investments. And as we said before, people, please, I will, if it's still open by the time this episode's happening, I'll put the description in the link in the description of how to apply to get investing as well, because I think it's very important, especially to be doing that, especially if you're a founder and it's something that you're looking to do. I think definitely take the opportunity, you know, even if it's not like on your goals yet, I'll just say just do it, right? The conversation might be valuable for you, right? So it's important. So do you have any final words for watchers and listeners?
Plan out your 2025 accordingly and be honest with yourself about what you really want, and then go for those goals.
Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate you, bro. Thank you so much for featuring on the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast. See you next week's episode.